We're going to help you today by helping you figure out how to end your story. So stay tuned.
Hi, and welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indies on their journey toward publication. I'm Christina Catane, and I write, well, whatever I want to right now.
And I am Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write, as always, historical Christian romance. Tina.
Sorry, my mind went blank.
That's okay. My mind went blank too when I hit start the stream. I was waiting, like, in my mind, like, because you're hosting, in my mind, you were gonna like start and I realized, no, I do it every time. And I'm like, I don't know what the episode is. I was just like, all of a sudden my mind went blank, and I was just like, so
yeah.
Apologize.
And there's been a few times where you haven't been here, and I'm in charge of like putting stuff for the chat. And I'm be like, why isn't Jen putting that up? Because she's not here. That's why.
That's awesome. Hey, we got some people here as well. Hopefully they're not as are scared away by our discombobulation this morning. But good morning, Catherine. It's good to see you in our chat. Purpose Behind the Pen, we're glad that you're here. And Piper is here as well. Good morning, everybody, and everyone that's going to be joining us.
Okay. And so we start every episode with a little segment we like to call What's Up? And that's where we just talk about what's up in our lives and everything else. So what's up with you, John?
Well, it was going to be actually a show and tell type of a what's up, but it went south really fast. So here's the thing with my office is a mess right now. If you followed us at all, you know that like I clean it and then we do some other home project in the house and everything gets stuffed in here. And so like I'm over it. I just haven't taken time to clean it and it's a mess. But we did do a home project. Our basement is basically finished. A few trim work things here and there. Our doors are up and everything. And the whole time we've lived here in this house, our dogs have not been downstairs. We don't have a door stopping them. They just have not tried the stairs. And they would sit up there, they'd lay and they'd watch on the stairs because you can kind of see most of like the den area. And they would just watch us. And my girls always wanted to kind of like bring them down. I said, not until we have doors, because they don't need to be in the laundry room. You have expense. My girls collect dolls. Like, and I'm like, I don't want any puppies chewing things. Like, so doors are up, basement's finished. So I finally said, okay, fine. So the little puppy took to it right away. She's not a puppy anymore, but she's just little. Took to it right away, right? Big Goliath Molly took a little bit of help, and I just had to hold her collar and bring her down. Well, now she's figured it out, right? She's also figured out that the door doesn't have a door handle on it yet, so she can just bust her way in, right? All that to tell you that when she figures out I'm in the office, she's in the office. Or if one of my girls is using my computer for homeschooling, she's in the office. Now it's little. This is like a very small office, and she's very big. And I think in her mind, she thinks that we're cornered and that the only reason we're down here is to give her attention. So I'll be typing. So when we were doing our sprint today, I don't know if we don't record it, but like my whole arm was doing this because she was under it trying to like get me to pet her. So I was going to be able to show her. I was going to, because she's good. She comes in and she'll just like, she wants you to pet her, but she's quiet and she just sits there and and then eventually she lays down and is like a big old bear rug in the office. But the problem is the little puppy has figured out what's going on. And she doesn't want to miss out on attention either. So she comes in and causes chaos. And then Molly, just this morning, while we were sprinting, Molly starts barking because she didn't want to share me. It was like kind of a little bit of a nightmare. So anyway, so that was going to be my what's up, was to show you guys how big Molly had gotten. But I had to take them both upstairs and we put a gate up so they can't get down here. But anyway.
I missed it all because I was concentrating on my sprint.
There you go.
You shouldn't at the camera.
Yeah, you shouldn't have been looking at me. So, but I still got quite a few words and I'm actually excited to share this morning. So
good.
Yeah. What about you, Tina? What's up with you?
Oh, well, it has been a couple of weeks, let me tell you what. And I think the November curse hit me this year. My mother-in-law passed away. The funeral was the day after Thanksgiving. So all of Thanksgiving week we had a house full of people, and my sister-in-law from Texas and her family and my boys, and my daughter and the baby were coming over every day. And so we were teasing my husband because there was going to be my daughter, her husband Adam, the 1 year old baby, my
Mhm.
granddaughter Athena, who's 6, me, who doesn't eat meat, and my husband Bob. He
Mhm.
bought an 18.5 pound turkey.
I'm with Bob. I kinda hate that idea. Like, we eat turkey and turkey derivatives for a week afterwards and love
Yeah.
it. Like, yeah.
But we
You
were having fun teasing him.
yeah.
And then suddenly we were worried we didn't have enough. So it's a good thing he bought that 18.5 pound turkey. And then the funeral was the day after Thanksgiving. And
Mhm.
then I let my sister in law from Texas talk me into going to Frankenmuth on Saturday.
So Frankenmuth, for those of you that are not local, is this little town. They call it Little Bavaria. It is, definitely a tourist area. It's
Yeah,
where the largest Christmas, um, like, store is in the world, and it's open year
right.
round. Like, it is and it's a lot of fun, but at this time of year, that whole town is crazy busy.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
went to Bronner's Christmas Wonderland because Athena wanted to go see Santa Claus.
Aw.
And I don't know what my sister-in-law wanted to do there, but their parking lot is literally acres and acres
Mhm.
and acres. It's huge. And we had trouble finding a place to park. So that should give you an idea of how many people were in that store. Like it was like swimming upstream to get anywhere. But Athena did get to see Santa Claus. My son-in-law, who has PTSD, and I sat in the lobby because we don't people very well. Um,
Right.
and just chatted. And then we went to Zender's, which is a famous chicken restaurant in downtown Frankenmuth. It's known all over the world. I'm not really sure why. I've never really been that impressed with their chicken, but it's famous. Anyway, we
It's the
waited in
side dishes for
line
me.
for an
Like,
hour.
the chicken's okay, it's the side dishes and that's what my girls
Oh,
love too. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what we love, but
None of it is on my diet.
right? The buttered noodles, the butter out yeah,
Everything
I
had
don't know how
butter or chicken or anyway,
yeah.
we waited in a line an hour with a 1 year old and a 6 year old standing in line. So that was
Oh my
fun.
word.
So everyone was pretty cranky by the time we sat down and ate, and I was so glad to get home. And so I don't know if it was having so many people in my house or if hugging people at the funeral or the going into the world with so many people in Frankenmuth, but I got so sick.
Oh.
My husband started with a scratchy throat, and then I got it, and then we were just sick the whole rest of the next week. But I did get back into the Zoom room yesterday
Mhm.
on our Facebook group and did some work on my manuscript. So I'm happy I got something accomplished, at least in the
Mm,
last 2 weeks.
yeah. It's been a crazy month and a
It
half
really
or
has.
so. Yeah.
I'm not sure why they chose November to be National Novel Writing Month.
Because I think they all like, the people that started it were all young and single with no kids.
Could
I
be.
mean, and so if you which I mean, I don't know any month that you could pick and say that's gonna be great for everybody. So I guess and they picked it because they had 30 days. That was
Yeah.
like it was gonna be a nice clean number. Um, but like, yeah, if you look at the origins, the people that work there still, I think are all like, younger or single or, no kids. And so November isn't December, right? So that it seems like it's easy, but for those with, it all starts in November if you
Yeah,
have a
it really
family.
does. It starts earlier every year,
Yeah.
I feel like. So I see we have some what's up in the chat, and I'm having trouble seeing them
All right, I
because
can
of
hit them.
my bifocal issues. But
All right, so Purpose Behind the Pen says my what's up is although I didn't win Nano, I only have 4 chapters left in book 5 to rewrite. Good for you. That is awesome.
good job.
And Piper says her what's up is she's taking a writing class on cozy mysteries and she's enjoying it. That's awesome. And Knitting Nerd says, "What's up? I won NaNoWriMo, yay, on November 18th and wrote 85,181 words
Oh
in
my
all."
gosh.
She also participated in 2 write-ins, and celebrated with a local NaNoWriMo group. That's great.
Knitting nerd, we need to come to your house and just like sit in your presence. So maybe some of that will rub off.
Right. Right. I just want to touch on something really quick too. If you're new to here and you don't know what the nano curse is, you'd have to probably watch a lot of episodes to like really get the full effect of it. But and we've kind of joked though it's not funny at all, though that I have a NaNoWriMo curse that because every year something happens tragically in my life that basically derails my plans for NaNoWriMo. Starting back before the group even started, but I started with NaNoWriMo is when I was diagnosed with cancer in the beginning. Cancer was discovered. It wasn't just it wasn't just diagnosed. Like they found it um in a surgery. And so that was back in 2016 and my grandmother died the same day. My beloved grandmother died the same day that they found cancer. The next fall, my uncle, who was more like a second dad to me, passed away. The fall after that, I had another uncle. I wasn't as close to him, but he was my dad's oldest brother living, and it was kind of devastating to my dad. Um, the year after that, my aunt, who was in perfect health, and then they found cancer, and 2 months later was gone. My aunt, who was like a second mom to me, the wife of the uncle that had died 2 years previously, she died. Like every year, there's something, and then this year, y'all know that my brother passed away like unexpectedly, like boom.
And last
Um,
year is your mother, right?
yes. Oh yeah. Well, but that was in July. But yes,
Oh,
my
okay.
mother is. Yes, my mother died in July. And again, I'm still getting over that. So yeah, so been a hard
And
road
it's
for me.
it's it's really hard because the age that we're in right now, all of our the older generations are getting older. Like my
Mhm,
mother's 86. All of her siblings have passed.
mhm,
And I just know that she's next. And it's hard. Like she's
yeah,
in pretty good health. So most of her problems are like with her bones and stuff.
mhm,
But her mind is sharp as a tack, and she doesn't have any chronic illness per se, except for osteoporosis. But you see them slowing down, and that you
right,
call them, they tell you the same stories they told you the last three phone calls, and
right,
you can just see it winding down, and it's really sad.
mhm.
So it's just this time of life that we're in, though. I think,
So imagine that, with my father and then losing my brother.
yeah,
Like, that wasn't supposed to happen that way, and
right.
my brother, like, he and I did not live the same lifestyle, and he had a lot of, demons that he battled in his life. He died from a heart attack. That was what happened. Like, it was and, according to the autopsy, it was a genetic thing, so guess who's making an appointment with a heart doctor here coming up very soon. Um, but seeing this with my dad and, like, knowing that, like, he's gonna be next, right? It was hard enough, and, like, I cherish, like, every minute I can get with him, if we spend together. But then for my brother to go who, like, you can say what you want about him, but as a brother, he was the best brother in the world. He was always my rock. He was always there when I needed him. He would do just he was random acts of kindness guy. He always took care of me in ways that, like, you don't need to as a brother, but he did. He always, like, I was his little sister, and he always treated me like his little sister and took care of me. And, like, to know that I'm gonna navigate the rest of my life without him, and to know that, like, my dad can't live forever, even though I keep praying to God that he will.
Yeah,
But to know that, like, I'm gonna navigate that alone, and I'm not alone. I know that I'm being maybe you might think I'm being melodramatic because
I
I
don't
do
think
have
that at all. No,
I do have a husband, and I have my kids, and I have my niece,
but it's not the same.
right.
Like I remember when my father passed, it was like now I'm on the tightrope, but now I don't have a safety net
Yeah,
underneath me.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. So
So, yeah, and my niece, she's just dealing with an awful lot, like, so be
our
in prayer for
prayers are with
her.
you all.
And I've been praying for you guys too, Tina, because I know this has been rough on your husband. Like, I get it. If anything, I understand what Bob is going through, and so, anyway,
Yeah, it's
didn't wanna
funny because my friend Tanya was talking to her therapist, and the therapist told her that if you swallow your feelings, it'll affect your digestion.
Mm,
And that's exactly what's happening to my husband right now. He's in a
mm,
lot of pain because of digestive issues, and I
mm.
just know that it's related.
Yeah.
Just so. All right, so let's try to lift this up to a happier note, maybe, and talk about our topic of the day.
Especially
Are you
since we have some people that are, like, so close to the end or are ready to write the end. Like, that's
right?
super exciting to see that in the chat. I'm so happy.
So were you done? I didn't want to cut you off if you weren't done.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can cut me
Okay,
off all day long because we both know that I'm a talker.
right. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so our topic for today is the end is in sight. How to conclude your story. And I just have to tell you a funny little thing. When I was doing the newsletter, I didn't go back and look at the title. I usually copy and paste the title into the
Mhm.
newsletter, and I actually wrote "The end is near," but
It
I
kinda
did
has a little
catch
bit different connotation, doesn't it?
right, and I caught it luckily before I sent out the newsletter. But I wrote "The end is near,"
That's
so
awesome.
you guys can laugh
Okay.
at me about that one. Okay,
I
so
I mean, it probably is. I mean, it's closer now than it was yesterday, right? So,
and
yeah.
I'm teaching a Bible study on Revelation, and I'm on chapter 22. So, and I couldn't do chapter 22 Wednesday because StreamYard would not connect to Facebook. There was some problem going on. So next Wednesday is when I get to finish Revelation, and that end is near. So
Yep, there you go.
okay, so what are some ways that we can finish up our story?
Yeah. So, um, this idea of this topic came up in my mind because, there have been several times that I have been chatting with other writers or other writers have reached out to me, and they can like, we know you struggle with a murky middle, right? We've had episodes on that. Getting started, it seems to be a lot the easiest part of writing, but some people struggle with pulling it all together. Like, how do you end it? And so, sometimes it kind of can just come easily, but sometimes not. So these are ways these are not the only ways, but
Mhm.
these are some ways that you can, like, if you're at that point and you just don't know how to, like, get across the finish line, take one of these and try writing it this way and we'll see. So we're gonna start with the obvious one. If I'm talking, it's a happily ever after. Like, we know it's my favorite. It's really the only thing I write is happily ever afters. This is no surprise to anyone. It's most commonly found in romance, but it's not the only genre that you're going to find this in. You can have an HEA, which is what we call it. You can find an HEA in pretty much um
I
any
would say
genre,
most books have an
right?
HEA.
Of some sort, right?
Yeah,
Maybe not like the characters end up in love or whatever, but it's still a happily ever after. In general, an HEA means like the two characters are in love at the end, but it doesn't
right,
mean that's not entirely the definition. So, but
right.
an HEA is all about that all of the plot points are tied up in a nice little bow, meaning that everything, all your different plot points you had, all the kind of the open holes and the questions that keep readers reading to find out how this is going to get solved, those are all tied up in a nice little bow. And if you've ever been reading a book and that doesn't happen, you'll know you probably left that book feeling unsatisfied. Unless there was we're going to talk about some other kind of endings that don't do that. But in general, that's what people want when they read a book. They want to know what happens. Like, even take like Harry Potter, if you've read Harry Potter, even though there's like an overarching storyline with Voldemort and that doesn't close up until the very end. Every storyline like has everything gets tied up and you find out that that Hermione could travel through time and this is why all this was happening. You find out all these little things at the end. And so
Mhm.
that's a happily ever after when all the plot
I
points.
was gonna say that in fantasy, a lot of times, the present problem is wrapped up and taken care of. But there's
Mhm.
always a bigger, like the bigger evil that's going on is still there, and that's why there's more books. But the
Mhm.
present problem is always taken care of. And in a murder mystery, you always have to solve it.
Yes.
You can't have a murder mystery with it. And so I would call that a happy ending, is that there's justice at the end of the book.
Yes. And if you're writing a murder mystery or reading a murder mystery or any kind of mystery, and like mystery is solved, but there are still things floating out there that they didn't answer, that's going to be unsatisfactory to your reader. Like all the little things, especially like any little like Easter eggs you put in there, like any little like foreshadowing and hints, they want to see that all come together at the end. So that would be a happily
Yeah,
ever
and I
after.
say the only exception to that is the personal life of the detective
Yes.
in the mystery. Like that can be what carries on into the next book, but the murder itself needs to be solved and wrapped up in a nice little bow by the end
Right,
of the
and
book.
all the plot points that have to do with the murder. So I guess I should have
Right,
been clear like that. Yes.
right.
All right. So the next way of doing it is a happily for now. I'm not a fan of happily for now, but it does serve its purpose in some genres. If you have a happily for now, um, I say it's not a romance. So come at me. There will be people that will argue that, but I stand firm that if it's a happily for now, it's not actually a romance. It could be any other genre. It could be women's fiction. It can be, whatever. But a good example of a happily for now would be like a adventure book or like it's not a book, it's a movie, but the Indiana Jones series I'm thinking of. Like there's a different or James Bond, not a great example, but there's a different romance subplot kind
Hmm.
of in there. And so all of the other plot points come together, a nice little bow, and he has like a romantic interest and they're together at the end, but that's not going to last. So
Right,
that would
because
be
in the
like a
next
happily for
movie,
now.
she's not there.
She's not even there. Like we don't
Right,
even know what happens, right? But she's not there. Um,
because he's a love him and leave him kind of guy.
right.
Yeah.
Another happily for now could be a series like The Hunger Games and books like that, to where they're safe at the end of the book and everything's happy, quote unquote, right now, but that's not going to last. So that would be a good use of happily for now in that genre.
Hmm.
So that's our second option.
Yeah.
Again, though, you still have to tie up those plot points,
Right.
right?
I didn't feel like the end of Hunger Games was happy at all, but maybe it's just my perspective.
Mm,
Like it's like they lived, yes, but she was so messed. Like she
yeah.
wasn't really any better off emotionally than she was, like worse off emotionally
I'm not a
than
fan
she
of
began.
I know it's gonna be a shock to everybody that I'm not a fan of that genre, but yeah, I'm not a fan. Um,
Okay. So the
so hold
next
on a second. Piper says, think I struggle with the ending. I tend to be fairly abrupt. They solve the issue and boom, the story is done. So here's my suggestion for you, Piper, is that and do with you what you want. When you're writing and you feel like you've just kind of done that, it's probably because you didn't have maybe enough plot points, and maybe you want to go back in and because I think you're a pantser, if I remember correctly, you might want to go back in and write in some more plot points, some things that like your audience is waiting for things to come together. That would be my guess would be, if you are this writer and all of a sudden everything's abrupt boom, that it because it takes you time to close up those holes, right? So it
Mhm.
should be a process of bringing everything together. So
And like what I've done in my first series of books is have multiple characters, like story arcs going on, so
mhm,
that when I get to the ending, it's not just the main ending, it's like the ending of each character's story arc. And
mm,
that makes it not so abrupt.
right. Catherine says maybe resolution is more fitting than HEA with some genres. Yeah, so maybe we use the term resolution as opposed to happily ever after, but it
Right.
still falls under the same thing, because technically, the definition of happily ever after is that all the plot points are tied up together and they're happy at the end. So yeah, maybe resolution if you're not comfortable using the HEA term for your genre. So
Right. And I always associate HEA with romance
mm,
specifically. And then I would just say happy ending for the rest. But that's
yeah,
just me. And
it's
I'm definitely not an industry
right.
person who decides these things.
Yeah,
So,
there's no police that are gonna come around and tell you, "You're using the term wrong." Like, this is
right.
just to help you figure out how to end your novel, so
Okay. So let's talk about cliffhangers.
mm.
Do you
So,
want to discuss? Do you want to explain what a cliffhanger is, just in case there's someone out there that doesn't really understand it?
so a cliffhanger is when at the end of the book, everything is not tied up and you are left wondering what's going to happen next with your characters. And so I just need to give you guys a side note. They're tricky. Cliffhangers are very tricky. They can be done well, but if you do them wrong, you will not only lose readers, but you're going to anger them and they're going to come back with the pitchforks and the fire and they're going to show up in your reviews, So it can be tricky, but when done right can be great. So in a proper cliffhanger, most of the plot points are tied up in a nice little bow. Only one or two elements should be left. So you don't leave everything. You can't just if you're leaving a ton of plot holes open at the end, it's not a cliffhanger, it's an unfinished book. Come at me. Like like I know I'm saying a lot of things with authority and you can disagree with me. That's totally fine. But honestly, like if you are leaving everything, all you are doing is cutting the book off and hoping that people are vested enough to come back for the second book. You need to give some resolution to the majority of your story and then leave something open that leads us into the next book. That's how a cliffhanger works. Now, Tina, you've utilized this, right?
Right, and I'm like a little unsure whether I would even term it a cliffhanger. When there was a reviewer that went in and told everyone that I ended the book on a cliffhanger, but
Mhm.
what I did is I resolved that storyline, and then I added an epilogue onto the end that
Mhm.
started the new storyline for the next book.
Right.
So I guess you might argue that's a cliffhanger
Mhm.
because the story was resolved. Everybody, I mean, the bad guys were still chasing her, I guess,
Mhm.
and she got into a vessel and took off into escape, and that's how I ended the epilogue.
Right.
So it's, I guess it's arguable whether that was a cliffhanger or not, but it was in the epilogue, and the main plot points of that story, of that particular storyline, were all resolved.
Mhm. And I think you handled it well. I don't think you did it poorly because like you said, everything was like tied up except for the epilogue part, which led you into the next story. And yet you still had somebody that was upset about it, right? Like
Yeah,
so that's what I'm
like
saying.
warning
Cliffhangers are
everybody this
tricky.
ends on a cliffhanger, and it's like, well, no, not really.
Right. What's funny is that you could have taken that epilogue and made it chapter 1 of your next book and then just made that like, end of the book and then like here's a preview of the next book and nobody would have like complained, right?
Yeah,
So but again, your reviewers that's the only reviewer that complained.
yeah, just
So
that one, and all the rest have been pretty good. So
right, exactly.
I'm not
So
gonna sweat it.
yeah, I wouldn't sweat it either. So that's what I'm saying though, is they can be tricky and you are going to anger some people, but you know what? If like, you feel led to do it and if it's your book, right? This is your
That's
story. So
right.
you do you. So, all right.
Okay, so we talked about cliffhangers and we talked about good and bad ones. So let's talk about one of my favorites, the tragic ending.
Oh, Tina, why is it your favorite?
I don't know. I just like that, the unexpected. That's what it is. I like
Mhm,
new and different and
mhm,
unexpected. Those are the kind of things that really get me going. And so, like, when Romeo and Juliet end up both committing suicide at the end of the story, like, to me, that was like, oh, that was such a twist,
mm.
you know? So I like that kind of thing.
And though I do adore Romeo and Juliet, and I loved introducing it to my daughters and having like teaching them, Shakespeare with using that. Um, Every time I read it or every time I watch a version of it, in my mind, I'm like, "If they would have only." Like,
Mhm.
I I don't enjoy it because 'cause I'm like, "No, like, they should have just a few minutes more," or, like, if they would have just communicated differently, or if someone hadn't been such an idiot, I don't enjoy the
See,
tragic
that's the
ending.
kind of thing like I
Mhm.
like like you're anticipating that it's going to work out and then it doesn't, and you're like, ah. Like, to me, that's satisfying. I can see how to some people that would be really, they would hate it. But those of us who like tragedies, I guess. It's just a difference
Mm,
in taste, I guess. I don't know.
yeah. Um, Piper says, "You have to." have enough left for people to wonder about to pull them in the next story. Yeah, and I think that's also another thing that's genre specific, because in romance, like, I don't. What I need to do is I show the first chapter or two or something exciting for the next book. I've
Right.
just introduced the characters. In romance, I have to make my characters interesting enough and lovable enough that people want to know more about them.
Yeah.
So for me,
Like, I
that's
wanna see their happily ever after, and then I know that, Cinderella is gonna get pregnant and the slipper's not gonna fit anymore.
right. Her feet are gonna swell.
So, like, let's see that story.
Right. So again, I very like we said at the beginning, there's lots of different ways to end. These are just our opinion, right? So
Mhm.
Catherine says, I got accused of having a cliffhanger by one reviewer because a small thing that didn't affect the romance wasn't resolved. There will always be those reviewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know without reading it. I'm not, sure how but um I try to have everything closed up, but I'm sure there are people that think I don't, but Knitting Nerd says, I'm not sure if my ending is a cliffhanger or not. My main character decided not to get an official diagnosis, but she remained open to getting an official diagnosis in the future. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call that a cliffhanger. It probably depends on your genre. I don't know what genre you're talking of. So,
Right.
oh,
Because if that was, like, women's fiction, um, that would be like deciding not to get a diagnosis is a resolution of the problem. Like,
mhm,
she made a choice, and this is where the hill she's gonna die on or whatever. And
right,
so I would argue that it's not a cliffhanger.
right. I agree with that, I think. And then Catherine says, Jen, I do the same with Gone with the Wind. Yes, Gone with the Wind. Love it. But I just want to shake her. I want to shake all of them in that book. So,
I've read Gone with the Wind, I've seen the movie, I don't remember how it ends.
oh, really? Or we'll talk off air because I want to ruin it for anybody. Because if
Yeah,
you haven't
we
read
don't
it,
wanna have any spoilers.
it's a pretty big book. I got it right up there. You need to read it. If you haven't read it, it is well
Yeah.
done. Yeah, you need to read it.
Yeah, don't watch the movie, read it.
No, the
It's
movie's
so
good
much better.
too. Read
I
it
know.
and then watch the movie. Like
Yeah,
it's
maybe that's
yeah,
I just felt like the book was 1,000 times better.
because it's more detail. And you know what I
Mhm.
mean? It gets you more. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was not happy with the casting of oh my gosh, what's his name? The one she had a crush on at the beginning that married Melanie.
Oh, yeah.
Starts with a W, right? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Getting
Anyway.
off. Yeah, squirrel. Okay. All right. So the
So,
next thing we want to talk about was framing the story.
framing the story.
So again, this is one of my favorite things. Now, this is one that can be used with above, any of them that are mentioned above. So these next couple ones that we're talking about, I feel like are more like like the other ones are strategy, and this is the actual application of how you can do some of these things. So I've mentioned framing before. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's one of my favorite things to read. And sometimes it's so subtle that readers, especially if they aren't like detail readers, they don't even notice. But framing is when you take a scene from the beginning or something from the beginning, and that's how you end it as well. For example, my third book starts off on a train at a train station, and it ends at a train station. Like they first come in contact with each other again at the train station, and then their like they come together finally at a train station. I love doing things like that. But it doesn't have it. I usually use physical locations. I kind of like that, but it doesn't have to be a physical location. It can be um, like emotional things. It could be somebody's dealing with a death and then ending with a person dealing with a death. But again, there has to be a character, like everything comes together. There's still the character arc, everything comes together. So there are different people. Like my third book, there are different people at the train stations. Then they're the
Right.
same person, but they're different.
And
um
like with my books, I kind of start off in Angelica's head and her thinking about the future, and I
mhm.
end in Angelica's head and her thinking about the future. So,
There you go, perfect example. So I would
yeah.
say if you're struggling with how you're going to end your book, go back to your beginning. How did you
Yeah.
begin it? Where are they? What's happening? And can you repeat, quote unquote, repeat that in a way that shows your characters have matured, have changed, that they have, their character art has come to a close, and they are a different person.
Yeah.
Can you show that, but in the same location or in the same kind of
Right.
situation?
And even if readers don't realize that you're doing that, there's just something so satisfying
Yes.
about a framing when you
Yes.
finish a book.
Not just for you, because I think you'll feel more
Right, I'm
satisfied.
saying as a
The
reader.
reader, yeah.
Yeah, and even in movies when they do that, I feel like the movie so, sometimes they end a movie and you're like, "What?" I feel
Mhm,
like they didn't finish it quite.
mhm,
Like, even though the problem is resolved, I feel like they didn't there should have been more, and I think a lot of times if they'd add a framing scene
mhm.
in those movies, it would have felt more resolved.
I absolutely 100% agree. I also think that as, writers, especially at Christmas time, watch some of the movies that you enjoy, watch them again, and note how many of them are framed,
Yeah,
like, which is pretty cool. So,
yeah. I really like framing.
yeah, me
And you
too.
don't have to frame whole stories, you could frame chapters and scenes
Yes.
too. So,
I
that's
one
a
of my
whole other episode.
Yeah, I love I read a book that is, and I've, tried emulating it too. I don't know if I ever have actually have, but I read a book once that almost every chapter, the one character would end with something like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do next." And then the next chapter is a totally different scene, and it's the other character, and they're like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do next." But, like, it was so well done that it made you kinda laugh, it kinda made you feel like that there was this connection between the characters even when they weren't together, and, like, just super well done, so, yeah.
Great, and that kinda
Ash
takes us in. Oh, go ahead.
Ashley, his name was Ashley, so it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with, yeah, thank you, no W. Yep.
That kinda brings us, organically into our last point. I think it's our last
Oh,
point.
real quick too, Knitting Nerd says, "I'm going to change my location for my final chapter for framing, thanks." I think it really helps to have, like, some of these ideas to use, so,
Right.
and you could do that every book you write. And it would be different story, and it won't get old because it's different locations and different ideas, and okay, sorry.
That's okay. So I was gonna say one way to frame the story is to have a prologue and an epilogue that match
Mhm.
each other.
Yes.
And so another way to end a story is with an epilogue. So do you want to explain to everyone who might not understand it completely what an
Yeah.
epilogue is?
And again, an epilogue, just like framing, can be used with any of the other suggestions that we made earlier. But an epilogue follows our characters usually quite a distance ahead in time. It's not just like the next chapter, it's like down the road time-wise. But it gives us a chance to see for the reader to see the characters in like their new world that's created by the resolution of the story. And new world might be a physical thing. It might physically be like that, the utopia, the dystopian world has like been conquered or whatever. And so it's actually literally a new world. Or it could just be in marriage, like in a romance, like here they are in married life, and this
Where it's
is,
like they're old now and sitting in their rockers and
yeah, yeah, it could be that far in advance. Like,
yeah.
oh, what was that name of that book? Redeeming Love. Francine Rivers' famous book, Redeeming Love. It ends with an epilogue, and it shows years and years and years down the road and tells you how their life worked out, which is cool because it was a very emotional book and
Mhm.
very lots of ups and downs. And I felt like that
I
was
think,
needed.
in the romance genre, that's probably my favorite
Hmm.
book.
You either love that book or you hate that book. It's very, I would not let young people read it,
Right.
but,
It can be controversial.
yes, but again, I think it's worth a read. I think yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, awesome. So, if you if you have never tried an epilogue, I say, and you feel like you've like maybe even what Piper has gone through and feeling like you just kind of like stop, boom, maybe try an epilogue. Now, again, if you're in a series, it can be difficult to do an epilogue because you don't want to get too far in the future and give away anything that's going to be in the next book. So it depends on genre. For me, it was easy. Like with my second book, I for sure did an epilogue. Um, I don't always do epilogues, but I did for the second book, but it wasn't too far. It was just far enough in the future for us to know that they got married because I felt like the ending was good, but we didn't know for sure, and so I threw that epilogue in there. So, yeah,
Right.
but it didn't give anything away of what the next book was going to be, and that's easier with romance, like I said, because I don't really do any open plot parts. A little bit, I guess I do a little bit. So, but anyways, that's a whole
Yeah,
other
but
story.
that's to follow the characters and their
It's
lives.
more
It's not the storyline.
it's more about character,
Yeah.
yes, development. Agreed. So
Okay. So
hopefully this will help if you're struggling with how to end. Take some of these, just give them a try. I would just sit down and like try writing chapters with each one of these things and see which sticks.
yeah.
That might be a fun
And
activity.
if you guys have some ideas that we didn't mention, go into the Facebook group and make a post, and we see what ideas you guys have, because we're not the authority on everything. So
Right.
we might not have
100%.
seen, not have thought of something.
Yep.
Okay, so it's time to transition into our next phase of the podcast, which is one of our favorite times, and it's called Feeding of the Backs. Because we get positive feedback from something that we got a prompt. We didn't have time to plan. We wrote for 15 minutes, no time to edit or revise or spell check or anything. And then we're going to read them out loud to you on the air.
Right.
So, Jen, do you want to tell everyone what our prompt was for today and then
Y-
read what you wrote?
Yes, it was the second Friday of the month. And so it's always a sentence. And today's sentence was 25 years later, she still regretted that specific moment. So, all right. Totally new characters. Totally not anything I've ever written before. So,
Oh, exciting.
hey, Melissa. The minute she heard the voice on the answer machine, Missy froze. Rafe. I miss you. The message continued. I really miss you. But this is like the third or fourth message I've left and I haven't heard back. I'm not sure what I've done, but I'd like a chance to apologize. How do you tell the nicest guy in the entire world that he hadn't done anything wrong? That it wasn't him, it was you. As corny as that had always sounded, Missy knew why people said that. Missy now knew why people said that. How could she tell him that she missed him too, but that her life had become so completely and utterly complicated that she didn't have the emotional space to think about him or his feelings? She felt like a jerk just thinking it, but it was true. Although he had never said so out loud, she knew Rafe had feelings for her. And even if his roommate had never told her, Rafe's actions spoke pretty loudly on their own. But she hadn't felt the same way, at least not as strongly as he'd felt for her. And now that he had moved hundreds of miles away and transferred schools, it made the chances of her developing feelings near impossible. And she didn't know how to tell him about Joe. She didn't know how to tell anybody about Joe since she didn't know where she and Joe stood. When they were alone, Joe made it very clear how he felt about her, but in front of others, it was a different story. But Rafe was the exact opposite. Rafe wore his feelings on his sleeve, and he made it pretty obvious that those feelings were all for Missy. Listen, I don't want to be that guy, the one who won't leave a girl alone. So this is my last call. Please return my call. But if you don't, I won't bother you again. She wanted to pick up right then. She wanted to tell him she missed him as a friend and that she never wanted to lose his friendship. But down deep inside, she knew he wanted more than friendship. Goodbye, Melissa, his deep voice said sadly, as if he knew what she was thinking. The machine beeped, signaling that the call had ended. Melissa went to the machine, took a deep breath, and hit the erase button. And 25 years later, she still regretted that specific moment.
Oh, that was so good.
Aw, thanks.
Wow. Like, I think a lot of people have that kind of moment in their past,
Mm,
and it like gets you right here in
mhm,
the gut. Like this the decisions that we make when we're young and dumb,
mhm,
and our priorities are all messed up.
mhm,
Wow, that was really good. Really good.
mhm.
Piper said something. Let's see.
Let's see. Catherine says, "Ouch." And then, can you read it or no?
Yeah,
Pipe.
I can see it now that it's up there. Oh,
Okay.
Jen, this is great. I can understand life being too complicated, but what is she doing with Joe? No way is he worth her time if he can't treat her well in front of others.
Mhm,
And then Purpose Behind the Pen said, definitely good.
mhm. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
that was good. That was good. Yeah, and the thing with Joe is, like, I think about myself when I was young, like college age, even though I didn't go to college then. Like,
Mhm,
it's all about the emotion and the being wrapped up in the, you know, and having a guy treat you like that. Like, there's this part of you that's like, oh, he's just, you make excuses for it. Whereas when you look back 25 years later, you can see who was just playing you.
mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because all right, spoiler alert, this is based in reality. Probably why felt so like, oh, because I truly feel like, oh, whenever I think about this. Because
Yeah.
true, it was like the whole Joe thing was a nightmare. And Raphael was a great guy, and I just couldn't see it.
Oh my
So
gosh, Raphael, just that name
I know,
alone.
I know.
All right.
And he was a basketball player. He was like 6'5".
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you're a tall girl, so that would have
All
been
right.
really
First
nice.
guy I ever dated that I could wear heels with. Yeah, it was great. I didn't really date.
Awesome.
I shouldn't say date. We did go out, I guess, a couple times. It's complicated. I
It's
was
always
I
complicated.
I just wish I could go back and do things differently, even just to be nicer and more like explain because like I didn't really realize emotionally what I was going through. And now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, I was being played, I think, partially. And I think I was just stressed and depressed and I just didn't know everything. And honestly, I didn't want to hurt him. But I just wasn't mature enough to say those words to him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now as an adult now, I feel like I could reach out to him and say, "Hey, I really need to explain myself," but like now it's been so long, it'd be so
Yeah,
weird
that would be
anyway.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had
So
a joke. Oh, I keep touching my lamp and it's like a touch thing, it goes off.
uh-huh.
I have a Joe in my past, and then there was this guy that like he was just so into me that it was almost a turn off.
Yeah.
And but the guy that was into me was the nice guy and the Joe was, the player.
Yeah,
So I
always.
think maybe all of us have something like that in our past.
And in my defense too, I this is gonna sound worse actually, is like I'm not attracted to dumb guys. Right. I just like I just don't like, even though it doesn't matter how good looking they are, if they were just like, if they acted dumb or whatever, I was just not interested. Well, Raphael was not dumb. He was like a double major at Boston University, chemistry and biology, going to be a doctor. Like not dumb. But when we would all hang out with all our friends and stuff, he was like that guy that like didn't get the joke at first.
Hmm.
And
It
like
was
that
probably a
was
language barrier.
maybe a little bit. I don't know, from Puerto Rico, so, like, English is,
Yeah.
like they speak
And a
it like
cultural barrier because sometimes the jokes are different.
I I think the bigger thing is I think that he was nervous around me, and I had such low self-esteem that I could never imagine that anybody would be interested enough in me to be nervous around me. But now I look back and I'm like, he totally acts like a guy that, like, is just smitten and doesn't know how to d
Yeah, and
you know
he's
what I
like
mean?
fumbling over his, because he's, yeah. There
Yeah.
was this guy that liked my daughter one time, and we are at camp meeting, and he was like
Mhm.
tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, quarterback of the football team kind of guy.
Mhm.
And he used to come by the campfire looking for her, and she was never there. She was all somewhere else. But one time she was, and he sat around the campfire, and he was just, talk like kind of babbling away.
Mhm.
And my daughter leaned over and in my ear whispered, "Could he just shut up and let me look at him?" Because the more he talked, the less attractive he got to her.
Yeah.
So,
I have
yeah.
one of those in my life too, so that's a whole
Yeah.
nother story, but all right, enough of Jen's past. Let's see what Tina wrote today.
Okay, I decided I wanted to try to write in my murder mystery world. And this is
Good.
a scene that I kind of wrote already, but it's just from a different kind of perspective.
I
So
do that
hopefully,
sometimes, and it just feels better. Sometimes I
mm-mm.
choose that one, and sometimes I don't, but yeah. It's
So we'll see which one you guys like better if you remember the other one.
okay.
Okay. 25 years later, she still regretted that specific moment.
Hmm.
The moment she turned to her father in frustration and anger. She told him she hated him, that she wished he were dead, and that she hoped to never lay eyes on him again. His eyes had reflected pain for just a moment before turning hard as steel. "If that is what you want, then consider yourself no longer my daughter," he'd said.
Mm.
"The troubles of our family are no longer yours, but neither is the protection. I would suggest leaving this town altogether, little girl, and good luck to you then." He turned and walked away, making his way to the back of the pub and through the heavy oak door of the office. Now here she was, living in a dingy, dilapidated trailer in a mobile home park, as they called it, as if calling it that instead of a trailer park elevated it somehow. Granted, the Pacific Coast weather around the holidays was a far sight better than the harsh New England winters. Still, this was not how she'd been raised to live. She was used to luxury and shopping trips to New York and downtown Boston. She was used to people knowing who she was wherever she went and treating her well. Whether it was out of respect or fear, she'd never stopped to consider back then. When everything went wrong, they'd been forced to go as far away as possible to escape anyone who knew her. This tiny little town on the Pacific coast had been both a haven and a prison these last
Mm.
long 10 years. The dishes all washed and drying in the rack, she attempted to scrub the rust stains off the sink with a Brillo pad. A tear escaped and rolled down her cheek, falling into foamy blue suds. And where was the man she'd given everything up for? The man she couldn't live without and chose over her family and all she'd ever known? Probably at a poker game, gambling away what little money they had, or drunk and high in a bar with a bunch of other losers, or possibly with some little Pop Tart too young to realize and stupid to realize he wasn't worth any of it.
Hmm.
She turned toward the tiny living room, only a step away from the kitchen, and tried to enjoy the light from the Christmas tree, lending a sense of peace to the room. But all she could think about was how was she going to have presents under the tree for the kids that year.
Oh, Tina. I love this scene. Oh my gosh. My heart aches for this character. I want to run to the store right now and buy presents for her kids. Like, so well done that she's so real to me. And I love like all like the little details and like I didn't know this about her, that she came from like wealth, and like, yeah, this is so good. And why is she running? Why is she hiding? And my favorite line is that that little town had been both a haven and a prison. So well done. I love it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So good. Um, Catherine says another ouch. Yeah, agreed. So much so. Piper says, "Ooh, Tina, this is so good. The details about scrubbing the pan, calling someone a little Pop Tart. Oof, the Christmas tree. Yeah, the Christmas tree is where I start. Like, it was good. The whole thing was good. And the Christmas tree, I was like, like, hold
Hmm.
on, she's taking us for a ride."
And I hadn't even planned to put the Christmas tree in there, but then I said that thing about the harsh New England winters, and I'm like, it's
Yeah,
got to be the holidays
right.
because that's when the difference would be the most striking between
Yeah,
like the very mild weather of the Pacific coast and the. So I
yeah,
decided to put the Christmas tree in there.
yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
would like
great.
this scene a lot better. And I don't know if I'm going to replace it or if I'm just going to like tack the other one on the end and revise it just a little so it fits.
Yeah, put him in like the same chapter with just a scene break.
Because
I mean,
the other
I don't know
scene
what.
that I wrote ends with the hitman standing in her living room and her
Oh.
asking him not to harm the kids
Mhm.
right before
Oh.
everything goes black.
Oh my gosh, Tina. Yeah, you gotta
So
finish this book. I know that you're struggling, but you gotta finish this book. Like, I'm so
I'm
excited with
working on
this.
it.
Yeah.
Working on it.
Well,
Okay.
I guess that's a good transition for what's next, right?
Yeah, what's next? So I just want to point out that last time we had the podcast, as a joke, I put a little title under my name and forgot it that I put it there. And I still forgot that I put it there, and it's still there. And I don't know if anyone's even noticed it.
I did notice. I thought you did it on purpose this time.
No,
Last
I
time I
just
didn't notice it.
forgot to take it out. And I just like that. I'm a big idea person.
Mhm.
Details are not my thing. So, like, I didn't even notice it.
That's
Anyway,
hilarious.
so going forward, there are at least 3 or 4 people that use the Zoom room to write in on a regular basis.
Mhm.
One of them has offered to help pay for the cost of me paying for a Zoom Pro so that we can keep it going. So
Mhm.
if you guys are interested in writing in the Zoom room,
Mhm.
please let me know. Either send me a message or put a post in the Facebook group or put a comment on this, and I'll keep it going because I like they did away with the rooms in Facebook, which was really awesome for writing together.
Mhm.
So I was trying to find an alternative, and I was able to find an app to add to my Zoom that has a timer and everything. So
Oh, that's so cool.
if you are interested, please let me know somehow, and if there's enough people, we'll continue it.
Right,
So
awesome.
that's basically what I wanted to say for my what's up. What's up with you?
My what's next is,
I'm sorry. What's
that's
next?
okay. It's gonna be super lame because, we started this episode talking about, like, all the loss I've had, and I'm still struggling, I'll be honest. I'm just very struggling, and, I've learned that I can't just push through and not feel, so
Right.
um and it's the holidays. Thanksgiving was rough. I didn't mention that, but like it was just very quiet affair for us, and it just feels so different to go from what we used to have. Like we used to have huge Thanksgivings, and it was a lot of people, a lot of food, a lot of laughing, and it was just us, and it was just weird. So, anywho, Christmas is in full swing in the Tong household at my church, and we have so much stuff to do over the next. If I just talk about this week, I have an event Friday night. My girls have Bible quizzing meet on Saturday, and then we have church Saturday night. Sunday, I have an event. Monday night, I have a dinner that I am hosting with our pastor and his wife for all the leadership members. And then Tuesday night is our teen Christmas party that I'm doing all the food for. So the next 6 days are insane for me. So I'm telling you right now, I'm not gonna get any work done these next 6 days. It's just not
And that's
happening.
fine. You give yourself some grace. There's no reason
Right.
you should be able to write right now with everything you're going through.
And honestly, the when I look at like what's been happening in my life, like my kids are my priority. They just are.
Okay.
And I want to spend every minute I can with them because this is Joelle's senior year. This is like, I mean, she'll be coming home for holidays and stuff, but it's
It's
different
never
after
the same.
it's never the same. And
And we're finally getting back to a place with my daughter, at least, where she has a family and she comes over on Fridays and spends the
Mhm.
night and things. And she calls me every day on like Messenger on the video so I can see my granddaughter. But it's not the same, but it's a new phase. But
Yeah.
it took like 10, 15 years in between, like she's just gone
Yeah.
to now she's my best friend kind of situation.
Yeah.
So it's
So
hard.
yeah, so I'm gonna soak up every minute I can with her and with my girls. And though I am excited to get back to writing, but I want to get this book done that I've started for ever, the Widows of the West one. But I really feel a pull to do contemporary too. So be praying for me to figure out how I can manage both, because I just really feel like that's going to be the next phase of my writing career, is to be able to do both. Or I just can't shake the pull to writing contemporary romance. So we'll see what God's plan is in that. So
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be praying.
yeah.
So we have Piper. She has a what's next. Next for me, working through the cozy mystery class and Christmas stuff, plus quilting tomorrow.
Awesome.
I'm really interested in that cozy mystery class and what you think of it and all the stuff you learned.
Yep. That's awesome.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess this concludes this episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. You'll want to join us next week for our Christmas episode. We're going to do something special for that.
Yep.
And so until next time, may your pen be prolific, your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ.
Bye now.
Bye.